Welcome to Drill On Earnings. We're back. Yes, latest look at earnings from SAP, that software giant from Europe. This is the business story on one stock. I'm going to move on. Cory Johnson, Chief Market Strategist for Epistrophy Capital Research. SAP reported Q4 earnings, and it was a really interesting call, interesting report. Yeah, they beat analyst estimates. Wall Street was looking for $9.2 billion. $1.40 in earnings. They had $10 billion in revenues, $1.49 in earnings, although I will say from here on, we'll talk in SAP language, not German. I'm not going to do that to you, but we are going to talk in euros here. And here's what the business actually did. So this business did over 9 billion euros, one of the best quarters they've ever put up, showing 11% growth and really strong growth coming off of just not strong growth a couple of years ago. But very specifically, they talked about a backlog of $18 billion in cloud business, up 32%. That's really exciting because that's the most important business for them, obviously growing at 3 times the size of the overall company. And total revenues for the year of 34 billion euro, really good. And again, most of that was cloud and software, of course. And cloud is now a majority of this business. They've been slow to get there, but it's now 50% of the business. So good for SAP. They've been trying to get there. They've been talking about their Ambition 2025 strategy, and showing this big cloud adoption helps them get to that point. And the non-ERP business, still very important. It's still most of the business, but ERP is creeping up there now, 45% of revenues. That's enterprise resource planning software that helps companies figure out how to do the things that they're going to do. And SAP is a leader of that globally, but certainly in Europe. The stock didn't move that much, down only 1%, but in a market that's been really challenged with tech stocks, you can see this thing is really great, at least in the last couple of days. 58% increase in the last year. Didn't really see a bump from DeepSeek. I'm talking about DeepSeek a lot in the last 24 hours or so, maybe even the last week. But this Chinese startup has said that they can make AI assistants work so much more cheaper than what ChatGPT and others were doing. Really caused a lot of fear in the marketplace. And the biggest concern was what kind of spending would happen in data centers. And was the data center build out going to be focused on NVIDIA, focused on these big honking systems, the kinds of which we heard like announced with Stargate, the SoftBank, OpenAI, Oracle partnership that was announced so recently? Well, that fear caused a lot of these stocks to sell off. But here you have the CEO of SAP saying 2 really important things, saying he's going to spend billions building data centers if he can get all the governments and everybody else in Europe to agree on what they're going to do together, and that the news of DeepSeek, far from being a reason to not build out data centers, is in fact a reason to do so. Here is the CEO of SAP, Christian Klein.
Looking at yesterday's news about the scale of AI infrastructure and the costs coming down and performance going up, I would say SAP has the big competitive advantage that we have business data no other tech company has. We are sitting at the nexus between business and technology. The value creation, how a Mercedes, how our German industry giants improve their cash flow, improve the resiliency of the supply chain, is not happening on the infrastructure layer. It's about infusing AI in their supply chain, in their finance, in their HR software. And this is, what this is about. And just to give you a flavor, we made the math. We would be willing also to invest over 40 billion in R&D and cloud operations in Europe only, SAP, 40 billion. But what we need, as everyone else, is the union we just talked about. And it's really imperative now that we take actions, both in the public and in the private sector.
So $40 billion to be spent, 40 billion euro, I should say, to be spent on data centers in Europe for AI. A huge commitment from SAP here, and I think got buried in the headlines today, but just an amazing story there. But what's it all mean? What's your big drill on earnings takeaway? And what's the one number that tells you a whole lot? Well, Q4 earnings from SAP here. Here's your central summary, what you need to know from drill down earnings takeaway here. Really strong year for SAP, showing 11% growth in the top line, but some of their other bit stuff, their cloud revenues up 25%, their cloud backlog up 32%, super strong. And maybe the one number that tells you a whole lot is that their cloud is growing at 27%. So even though the license business is still shrinking a bit, cloud is the name of the game for SAP, and they're going to spend $40 billion euro building data center. All right, thanks for listening to Drill On Earnings. I'm Cory Johnson.